Good morning. Happy Monday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. A couple of housekeeping issues. Applications for the Intensive 15 are rolling in. We're only a couple away from where I make the cutoff because there's a lot of applications to read for that. So we'll probably cut that off at the end of business today. So if you're still interested in applying for the Intensive 15, which is in November, I believe it's the 18th through the 21st, then please get your application in today so you don't miss out on that opportunity. It'll be the last intensive for 2021. We just moved iFast over the weekend, so things are a little bit crazy at this point. So we're going to dig straight into today's Q&A. And I was talking to Manuel, and we were talking about pulling off the floor and how we're going to overcome the inertia and what we're going to see under certain circumstances. What do we need from a positioning standpoint to actually make that pull off the floor? So we're talking about max P here. We're talking about maximum propulsion into the ground. So we're going to have an IR representation, which means that we're going to have these IR ilium, we're going to have a nutated sacrum, and we have to have a concentrically oriented pelvic outlet. So we have to have a lot of pressure going upward. But what if you can't achieve that position? What is going to be our strategy under those circumstances? What are we going to see from a compensatory standpoint? So we talked a little bit about that. And then we talked a little bit about connective tissues as well. So I threw a little segment on the end of here that we've seen before. If you go back to the 7 components of force video where we were talking about connective tissue behaviors, we also have to consider that if we have yielding actions where we need overcoming actions to make these pulls off the floor, then we're going to need to train those as well. So we talked a little bit about that as well. So very useful video in a number of regards in regards to positions and such, but especially pulling off the floor. If you would like to participate in a 15-minute consultation, please go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com, put 15-minute consultation in the subject line. We will arrange that at our mutual convenience. I got to bust a move. Everybody have a great Monday. I'll see you later.
Hey Bill, I was trying to think about the first pull in a clean or a snatch. It's a little bit more of a squatty position than a hinge in a deadlift. And I notice sometimes athletes will instead of keeping their center of gravity closer to max P, they'll just shift back into early and they'll let their hips rise. And so I was wondering, is that a lack of internal rotation at the pelvis? So then they're just trying to mutate and dump it forward to get the IR. Is that a way to think about it, or is there too much? And this is assuming they can get into position, so they're not like rounded or crazy, in a crazy position to begin with.
Yeah. So think about the inertia that's required to break the bar off the floor. All right. That's going to, and you look at the orientation of the tibia relative to the foot. So the tibia is over the foot, right? Okay. So if they were moving forward, they would literally be at max P. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is they are going into max P to break the weight off the floor, but they're not going to go forward because that would be a missed lift by a long shot. So what has to happen? That's why the tibia goes backwards as they're bringing the weight off the ground to the knee. That's max P, but it's max P with a heel on the ground, right? If I don't have the capacity to produce the down force, so that's in high internal pressure, concentrically oriented outlet, nutated position of the sacrum. If I don't have that, right, I've got to go find a way to get to max P. So how do you do that? Well, if I lift my butt up, I can create more downforce by keeping my center of gravity over my forefoot, right? That's what you're looking at. They're just using an alternate, and again, a less effective strategy, obviously. What do you know what they typically blame for this? Like a typical Olympic coach would blame a muscle for this problem, right?
Yeah, they would say like weak quads or strong lower back, or
the hamstrings usually get blamed for it, right? Because they see the butt going up, right? And they say, oh, you can't. They're looking at they blame hamstrings for it.
Yeah, because it doesn't keep the knee flexed.
Exactly right. There you go. Yeah. But what I would say is you just need to spend more time capturing the max propulsive capabilities. Okay. And then also think about, okay, so when you do your little hip bump before you pull. So now we're back to Andrew's question at the very beginning of the call. So you bump a couple of times to create the stiffness before you pull the weight off the floor. Right? So that's a clue as to what strategy you're actually using as you break the weight off the floor. I need more stiffness. Okay. And so now you're going to be looking at some of your quicker activities, probably to try to capture the mid to max P position in the pelvis. So assuming it's not a pure like lack of understanding technical glitch, you need to train the physiology under those circumstances, because you could probably coach until you're blue in the face and it's not going to matter diddly squat until they have the capacity to create that concentrically oriented outlet under a high pressure. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But that's why, I mean, everybody always wonders why you see the Olympic lifters bouncing their butt before they pull. It's like they're optimizing stiffness. It's the same thing that it's kind of like, when you've got the bar racked before the jerk, and you try to get like that perfect amount of air, so you're like sipping and blowing before you go into the jerk. That's tuning stiffness. Same thing from the bottom up.
Okay.
Could you give a quick example of what you just described?
Take a box squat.
Yeah.
Okay. Take a box squat. And if you do a full load on a box squat, you're going to yield more than if you did a touch and go. Okay. So if I want somebody's connective tissues to behave more stiff, more stiff. I don't know. It's early. If I want stiffer connective tissue behavior, right? So what I might do is I might say, okay, deload to the box first, and then spend less time on the box, and then less time on the box, and then touch and go, and you see what I'm getting at? Okay. Right. You can also do this where you would do like maybe a jump up to another box, where you would start them on just a simple box squat, deload, less time on the box, touch and go, and then jump, right? So I'm sort of ramping up the stiffness, if you will, right? Versus somebody that's going from like a full yielding action that might be what we would deem less than ideal. So somebody that might, like a tall, slender volleyball player that might have a lot of eccentric orientation, a lot of yielding capabilities, but not a lot of turnaround. So the vertical jump is a little bit lower than you would like it to be. And so again, you transition them into a faster and faster loading representation, so the tissue becomes stiffer, and then you turn that into the more explosive activity.